Welcome to Leaders and Learners. My name is Tanya McKenzie, and you can find me at the intersection of public relations and leadership. Join us as we talk to organizational leaders, elected officials, experts, authors, artists, and personalities, sharing their stories, talking about how they got to where they are and how they continue to learn and lead the way. So without further ado, let's get into it. Greetings, good people. It's your girl T here with another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. So I have a pretty amazing guest today. He is an exec from Nike. We're going to talk about some things that maybe you think you know about, but I doubt you know as much as him. So hopefully you leave today with some knowledge, some opportunities to expand and grow, and some financial awareness, because we're going to get into that also. People run from money when it comes to money and they don't understand it. You start, shriveling away and you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to learn about it. Not everybody's business savvy. Today, we're going to talk about why that's important. It's important to expand your mind, be able to learn, grow, and use those experiences to be able to help you grow your career and maybe even your personal finances. So without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome Alex Rodgers. How are you?
Great, Tanya. Thanks for having me today.
I'm excited to have you here. I want you to go ahead and jump in and let the people know. I know you're at Nike now. We'll get into that, but what have you been doing with your career before Nike?
Okay, great. Thanks. Well, I've been with Nike just over 2 years, and currently I'm the director of financial planning and analysis supporting the Nike technology organization. Prior to Nike, I've served in a variety of financial planning and analysis roles across a variety of industries, business models, and situations. I started my corporate career at LG&E Energy in Louisville, Kentucky, where I worked in product management and then transitioned to finance. Then I accepted a role at GE Healthcare in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I worked in the global business planning and then transitioned to a commercial finance role supporting the used diagnostic imaging equipment business. And after 4 years at GE, I transitioned to Office Depot, where I worked for 9 years. I started off in stores finance in Dallas, Texas. And then after 2 years, I moved to Boca Raton, Florida, where I worked in the corporate planning department for about 4.5 years. And then my final role at Office Depot was I was a finance owner for Office Depot's North American inventory. For about an $8 billion business. I was in that role for about 2 years. After Office Depot, I joined Walmart and joined the tech finance team in Bentonville, Arkansas. Was on that team for about 2 years, and then moved into a merchandising finance and strategy role for Walmart US. After Walmart, I worked at Chewy, which is the online pets retailer down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida area, and as a director of merchandising finance. And then again, after 2 years there, I joined Nike. So I would say, most of my career has been spent in kind of like the retail industry, both specialty as well as general merchandise retailer across brick and mortar and direct to consumer. So, that's kind of like my story. I think it's also important for me to add is I didn't start off in corporate America. I actually went to West Point, so I served as a field artillery officer at Fort Liberty, which used to be called Fort Bragg, and I held a variety of leadership positions, from being a fire direction officer, a platoon leader a couple of times, and then ultimately I was the battalion adjutant, which was effectively the HR manager for our artillery battalion.
You
So,
named some pretty big brands there. When
mhm.
you were in the military, was that something that you saw yourself doing, or did life happen and you just kind of followed the path?
Well, it's interesting because when I graduated and came on active duty, it was post the first Gulf War. So I'd anticipated maybe potentially making a career out of military service. However, things kind of changed after, based on some of the decisions that President Bush and General Powell made with respect to kind of rescoping the military. And I didn't see necessarily the career growth opportunity at that point. So, you know, I had a really a good friend of mine who's also a classmate of mine from West Point, who encouraged me to pursue an MBA, because that would provide I guess a pretty broad portfolio of career growth opportunities as I transitioned out of the Army. So that's kind of how I decided upon that path. I would say I didn't really know what I wanted to do once I got to got to business school. I took the opportunity to learn a lot from my classmates and get some exposure, because up to that point my career had kind of been, I'll call it, programmed to serve as an artillery officer, an Army officer. So for me, it was just a smorgasbord of different opportunities, and just to try to take it all in. There's a variety of industries, there's a variety of functional areas, and you have to kind of figure out the type of work that you enjoy doing, and what type of like culture or environment that you like to serve in as well.
In the career that you serve in now, what from your military background helps you be successful where you're at?
I think all organizations need leadership, and the foundation of the Army is leadership, and that's also West Point is a leadership institution, and I think all those skills around leadership are transferable to any type of like organization, be it public or private. Um, the other thing is about, I think, this concept of duty, and that means someone who acts like an owner, and they're intensely committed to achieving the organization's goals and enabling an environment for their teams to be successful.
I believe that everyone has leadership in them, but not everyone wants to lead. Not everyone wants to be a leader. It takes a certain type of person. You are in a company now where most people need to step up to whatever challenge it is that they're given, right? So, how do you, as a leader, when you see people flipping and not actually doing the things that they should be doing as a leader in leadership roles, how do you move the needle forward? How do you get them to move in more of a leadership fashion, or what you would like to see happen?
Right. I'm a big believer that everyone in an enterprise has a kind of a leadership role, or some level of responsibility to achieving the organization's goals, its financial targets, its ultimate enabling the business strategy. So I think part of it is, in my experience, helping everyone understand how their role contributes to the cause, and how what actions they can take to make sure that we're moving the needle, per se. And I can do that by I think you can do that by walking them through some of the company's strategy, and understanding this is our team's role in accomplishing this lever of the strategy. Also helping them understand the context of where the company is relative to the competition, kind of really helps it hit home.
But that would actually require you to get them to care. And
Yeah.
everyone does not. So where do you go from there? Where do you go when you have employees and team members that are just complacent, and their level of energy and care just isn't where yours is?
I mean, I think that's where as a leader, part of your responsibility is to, one, set priorities, but also help, establish goals and objectives for your teams, and really be specific about their responsibilities, and, what your expectations of them are in their role. And I think part of that is, it's also an ongoing conversation. It's not just like, once every 3 months, but one of the things I also learned from my experience in the Army, there was a lot of, we there was a lot of like there's ongoing counseling on a monthly basis for each of the individual soldiers. So leaders were constantly investing in the people and the members of their team to help them improve their performance and be completely transparent as to where they stand.
How does diversity play into your role at Nike and in your ability to lead?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think diversity is basically a situation where is how I see it is it's a kind of like a portfolio of different value people having a portfolio of different values, beliefs, attitudes, and I would say experiences. And I think the best way to I think demonstrate diversity is to be willing to first of all to be willing to listen and have empathy for where other people are coming from. It's inevitable that people are going to have differences of opinion or a perspective. However, at the end of the day, it's important to collaborate and better understand where people are coming from, and in order to kind of to gain alignment. I think if you're able to demonstrate that you actually care about uh, what people have to say and their inputs, I think that goes a long way to ensuring a better outcome.
A lot of what you do centers around finance. In every position that I've read that you've had, it's all comes down to dollars and cents. A lot of budgeting and finance. Have you always been a money guy, or is this something that just came while you were growing your career?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. So my major at West Point was American politics with a minor in systems engineering or industrial engineering.
Politics and money. I love
Yep,
it.
so that's so I spent a lot of time, a lot of my classroom time at West Point in the Department of Social Sciences. So at that time, the curriculum consisted of political science and I'll call it economics. But the bottom line of both of those different disciplines is that leaders have to make difficult decisions, and they have to balance trade-offs. From both like an economic perspective as well as like I'll call it from a political or social science angle as well. But what I found as I gained some experience outside after business school, and when I got to my second company, GE Medical Systems or GE Healthcare, I found that what I enjoyed about the type of work that I enjoyed doing was, I think, a combination of both leadership as well as technical skills. So what I found in business school was that finance, seemed to be the most intellectually challenging, or
Mm.
of all the different disciplines. But I think initially I wanted to pursue a career on Wall Street, where finance is more of a profit center.
Mm.
You're doing sales and trading, or corporate finance advisory, investment banking, versus finance in a corporation where you're a cost center, and so you're there to serve as a strategic business partner, from a finance angle to the leadership team. And I found that the blend of the finance and the leadership was, to me, the most exciting thing about working in finance. It was actually more practical application of like the finance concepts in a
It would
lot of
be
ways.
remiss of me not to ask, what do you think of our current state of politics and our inability to be able to do things like balance budget and prioritize necessities over wants?
Well, I think one observation I've had is, what I think I've seen over the last, I call it 10 to probably since when I was in business school in the late 90s was, I think we've gotten away from intellectual honesty. And so we haven't there's a lot of people who don't necessarily tell the truth, or they tell it in a way that is disingenuous.
Alternative facts?
Yes, yes. I mean, especially when we live in a world where technology is fully integrated within our within our lifestyle. We rely on technology, which is all based upon science and data, to build these functions, build these capabilities that we use to, live our life, both at work and outside of work. And so I think, we've certainly lost a step in terms of like our ability to make hard decisions and do what's in the best interest of our society. And
How
I
do
think,
we get that back though? Like, seriously, how do we
I mean,
get that back? Exactly what you are saying. How do we
it's
get that
I
back?
think it certainly starts with, I think people need to be take ownership of, like, the voting process, and make sure that their voices are heard, and that they actually show up. Voting is a right, it's not a privilege. You don't have to exercise it. so
But
so
okay, right there, we have come to a point now where we've had people fight for our right to vote, but we'll take that right and opt out. How did we get there? Like, how do we fix this?
I think, I believe people have maybe become disillusioned,
Mm,
or, with some of the behaviors that their elected officials have demonstrated. And then there's also that degree of voter apathy. They don't understand how this choices will directly impact you. Well, I think some of the, recent decisions over the last 3 to 5 years, with some of the shifts and some of the established, like, laws of the land, or rulings from like the 1960s and 1950s, have transitioned. We've shifted. There's things that we took to be as true, accepted as true, in our ways of living here in the United States, that have certainly come into question. And, the, at the end of the day, supposedly we have this Bill of Rights, and we have this Bill of Rights, and that, we have, that we have been granted us as individuals. But in some ways, they've come into question from the way that some of the, I'll call it, the laws have evolved, or the perspective of the courts have shifted.
yeah.
But that
Where I
that
live,
happened. But that's an outcome. It's also an outcome of, like, who had the opportunity to make the decision
right.
about, because inevitably, Supreme Court justices and legislators, they retire and move on. So they're not there permanently, but it took time for this to happen. It didn't happen
Yeah.
overnight, but there
Yep.
were certainly were inflection points where, things could have been different had people been, more involved, and weighed
Yeah.
their voice, and they actually understood the implications of what their choice of not to vote or
Right. That
participate
part.
meant.
Where I live, voter apathy keeps the current power structure where it's at. So they go out of their way to promote voter apathy. It's crazy to me, but I digress. Back to you though, which I think is so interesting. What are three words that you would never want affiliated with you? Three words.
Okay, three words. Dishonest, is certainly the first one. Um, you know, to me, ethics and integrity are very important. That's a big part of my brand. So, it's not just in at work, but it's in everything that I do. You can't be somebody who's honest at work and then be dishonest outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to live that value every day. I think the other part of it is something I would not want to be described. Let me put it in a different way. I want to be known as somebody who meets deliverables, and business commitments. Say
Mm,
equals do. That I act like an owner and I take ownership. So I don't want to be known as somebody who can't get the job done. Um, I think the other part of it is, I think, I would not be want to be described as being selfish or self-centered. You
mm,
know, my 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 perspective is that, leaders are there to enable the success of their team. In the army, the commissioned officers eat last when you're in the field. All the
mm.
soldiers do all the work, and the officers eat last in the chow line. So you have to be willing to put others above yourself. But you're responsible for, responsible for creating an environment for people to be successful. Holding people accountable to set directions. set direction, establish priorities, provide the resources. And if soldiers don't come, if soldiers are people, if you can't solve their problems, they're going to stop coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is also important. I think the other thing is, I always want to demonstrate that I have capacity and drive. That I have the ability to take on the work, but also the drive to try to execute on it as well.
So selfless instead of selfish. I
Yes,
like that.
yes, yeah.
I
Selfless
like
instead of
that.
selfish. Yep.
Before we hopped on, we did talk about you getting a business coach. Tell the people why it's important to have others in your life that coach you and guide you, no matter where you are in your career. You still need those people.
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things I learned as a plebe was at West Point was to know yourself and seek self improvement. And everyone in my belief has a development. I'll call it some developmental opportunities, things that they aren't so good at that they can always continue to work on and develop. And I think having a kind of like an advisory board or a coach is something that can be, I think, in my mind, can be very valuable. Um, I think one of my regrets is that I didn't engage a coach earlier in my career, but I thought, I upon the suggestion of a sibling and some other people in my professional network, I engaged one because I think it's the best way to improve your I think I'll call it the soft skills and understand what your strengths are and what your opportunities are. So I actually, one of the things I just did was actually a 360 survey. So I mentioned I've only been with Nike a couple of years. So I just, sent a survey out to about just over 25 of my colleagues at work to kind of get an understanding of like where they see my strengths and where they see my opportunities are and how I'm perceived, because a lot of this is about personal branding, and if you don't know what you don't know, how can you behave differently and raise your level of performance. So I know well, I think maybe most people are aware that Bobby Knight passed away
Recently
recently.
passed.
And one of the things I remember once I was watching an interview of him is like how he would assess talent, when he was recruiting basketball players. And then one of the things he said, you just don't know how people are going to pan out, when they move from high school to college. And one of these things he mentioned was being coachable. How do not all players, not everyone responds to coaching, and that's and the coach, they said that the coaches don't just necessarily decide who gets playing time, the players decide it. The coach is there to evaluate the talent and help people, and coach them for improvement, you know and coaches are effectively teachers. That's what they're doing. Coaches are extension of teachers. So that's something that really resonated with me, that I gained from Bobby Knight's perspective.
I have always, since I was a young girl, because he did what he did for so long, and he did it well. I've always admired everything about him, even his temperament, even when he loses his mind. I can always appreciate that because there's passion behind that, right? There's a level of, I want to see you do better. Like, I want to win, but I know you can do better than what you're doing. And I need that from you. So when you have people in your life that can get to know you and then see where you are slipping and help give you that push through those gaps that you have in your career and your personal life, I think there's an opportunity there that is just limitless.
Yes, and there's a again, you have to be open to feedback, and sometimes that can be a tough situation. But you have to. One way I look at it is feedback is a gift. It's a powerful gift that people are given to you, and if it's done in a way that you're not, and if it's done in a way that where people can kind of maintain their confidentiality and they're not put on the spot, but they're and if you're genuinely interested in hearing what they have to say, I think people are going to be very supportive of those efforts.
I think that that's just where it gets hard because people become so defensive and so attached to even their missteps and their errors. They're so attached to their even the wrong way of doing things because they haven't let go of the ability to be able to grow. They become complacent even in their missteps and just defensive. So it's hard sometimes for people to really receive that feedback because they're attached to this thing that they've done or how they think it should be done, their own mindset, which is crazy. I think it holds us back a lot. And I just really wish as a people, as a society, we were more open to change and criticism because
Uh,
it'll help us improve.
That's a good point. I think people should one should always be self-aware about their impacts, the impact of their behaviors have upon others.
Listen,
Uh,
I'm a mess. I'm a hot mess. And I always say I am a work in progress every day. My friends be like, how are you doing today? Just trying to get it together. Every day I'm trying to get it together. That just reminds me I don't have all the answers. And I'm open to whatever it is you bring into this conversation. You know,
yes.
we have to
Yeah.
get there. I do want to ask you, what's next for you? And what do you want your legacy to be?
Hmm. What's next for me? Well, you know, right now I'm, again, I'm intensely focused on, creating value for Nike in my role, and I'm looking forward to, growing my capacity for responsibility. And, I would say, you know, hopefully by, I think, meeting my exceeding commitments and demonstrating the Nike values and culture, that I can continue to grow my career at Nike, and because I think there's a broad runway here. I'm really excited about the fact that I got to join this company, and I have to pinch myself every day that I've had to, I'm able to work at a brand that I've been connected to since I was, I'd say maybe 10 years old or so. It's kind of like a accumulation of a lot of like different experiences and work and investment that I've made in myself, and
Mm.
my willingness to kind of take risks and do different things.
I love that. And I love that for you because not everyone can say they are somewhere they want to be. You
Hmm.
know,
I
are
mean,
you somewhere you want to be?
yes. I mean, what I kind of think about, one of the things that you know, you sent me ahead of time was, talking about this kind of like call to action, but one of the things I think I would like to share with people that may, be on the call here is that, be willing to grow yourself and be a continuous learner. You know, that may involve making lateral moves in your career to build a basis of experience and knowledge. And not every and make sure you bloom where you're planted. Be successful in the role that you're in, and do it to the perform it to the best of your ability. Um, the other thing is, look at opportunities that are in the organization or another area, another companies that I think that may be unpopular, that maybe no one wants. Those can present a really healthy opportunity for you to grow yourself and your career. It's the second role that I held at GE Healthcare was a role that no one wanted. It was my mentor. My mentor, she teed me up for that opportunity because it was a small business area of the business that was growing rapidly, and me as a junior analyst would have the opportunity to do all types of different things under, like, I call it, the guidance or coaching of an experienced GE finance manager. And that was a role that was, an inflection point for my career. And then same thing happened at Office Depot, working in corporate planning, um, and then merchandising finance, where I was the finance owner of inventory. Those are, pretty complex and demanding roles, and you need to understand a lot of different finance concepts all at once, and putting them into action. But I gained a lot of, like, those two roles were other inflection points in my career that kind of set me, I said, set me apart as someone who is kind of a finance athlete. And uh, you know so one should, I would say, look for those opportunities to grow your skill set that may necessarily be unpopular, but may be the right thing to do in the long run. They may be the right thing for you to do.
Where are you from, Mr.
Oh,
Rogers?
I actually grew up in Champaign, Urbana, Illinois. That's where
Mm.
I grew up. I was actually born in the Virgin Islands. My dad was a professor at the University of the Virgin Islands, and then we moved back to the mainland after I was after I was born. But I've
Wow.
lived in 11 different states in my lifetime.
Wow. Where are you spending the holidays?
For Thanksgiving, I'll be here in Portland. But during Christmas, I'm going to go back to fly down to Florida to spend some time with my mom and my sister.
I love
So
that. I love
my
that
mom
for
and
you.
sister are in Florida. My two brothers are in Chicago.
Cool. Very cool. Well, I want to thank you for spending time with me today. If there are people that want to get in touch with you or just chat with you or maybe get some guidance from you, let them know how to get in touch with you where they can find you.
Sure, I'm actually on LinkedIn. My profile name is Alex Rodgers, Rodgers 1, and you'll be able to find me there. So I'm certainly open to speaking with people. I actually have undergraduate students that reach out to me on occasion looking for some advice or guidance. So I'm more than willing to, speak with people and share with them the benefit of my experience.
Before I go, Alex, Frederick, which name do you go by and how'd you get two names? What's going on here? Help
I
me out.
actually go by Alex. I'm Fred Jr., so I do sign my name as Frederick A. Rodgers Jr. So there's about 5 people in my circle of friends who call me Fred, but they found that out when I was a youngster, and they thought it sounded cooler than Alex. So they will call me Fred, but it's about 5 people, but I go by Alex.
All right, Alex. Well, thank you again for being here. I appreciate your time and please let's keep in touch.
Sure, Tanya, this is great. Thank you so much for having me today. This has been a great conversation,
Thank
and you
you.
and you have a great Thanksgiving yourself and Christmas holiday.
Appreciate it.
All
Appreciate
right,
it. All right. All right, guys, make sure that you get in touch with him, that you stay connected. You never know when you'll have some floating question, some random, like, I wonder how to navigate this. I wonder what Alex would do in this situation, or I'm just trying to figure out the best steps for my career. Or, like he said, there might be opportunities for you that you don't think are the best, but you need someone to talk through maybe this is something that might benefit me. It's always good to have people in your life that will give you a very neutral but beneficial response to things. And that's something I always want to bring you is that you know that there are people that you can go to and ask questions that will help make you better, help improve and grow your career and even your personal life. It's important. We got to do both. Professional, personal, we have to keep growing. We can't stay stagnant. We can't stay in the same place. We have to grow mind, body, and soul. So until next time, peace, love, and good vibes. I'll see you soon. Hey, thanks for showing up to the podcast where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. When you get a sec, take a moment, leave a comment. What do you think about today's episode? And share it with someone that you know could use the gems that were dropped today. Follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss who's coming up next. You never know who could show up here and what they could say. For your professional needs, marketing, PR, communications, and leadership, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Sand and Shores or hit us up at sandandshores.com. Again, thanks so much for showing up. We appreciate you and we'll see you soon.